The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The National Economic and Development Authority is targeting to get about 20 trillion pesos in investments for its Public Investment Program or PIP. NEDA reports that there are over 5,300 priority projects worth over 20 trillion pesos under the program, under the planned period from 2023 to 2028. NEDA says over 85% of the investment target will go to infrastructure projects. This, as NEDA says, that infrastructure has been identified under the Philippine Development Plan as critical to the economic transformation of the country. Inflation in the country slowed further in the month of April. Headline inflation settled at 6.6% last month, according to data from the Philippine Statistics Authority. That's lower than the 7.6% logged in March and the 8.6% in February. The latest figure is also well within the Bangko Central's estimated range of 6.3 to 7.1% for the month of April. The PSA says the slower rise in prices of food and non-alcoholic beverages as well as transport helped tamp down headline inflation. The April figure brings the year-to-date inflation at 7.9%. Core inflation also slowed to 7.9% in April from the 8% figure recorded in March. Given the latest data, the National Economic and Development Authority is optimistic that inflation will continue on its downward trend and eventually settle within government target. However, NEDA says it will continue to push for proactive measures to protect Filipinos' purchasing power. Let's discuss these figures further with Ateneo de Manila Economics Professor Leonardo Lanzona Jr. Good morning, Prof., and thank you very much for joining us on the show this morning.
Good morning, Rico. Thank you for having me in your program.
Yes, Prof, first off, did you expect inflation to ease further in April?
Yeah, there were already some reports that, in fact, inflation is beginning to decline. But that is actually expected in the sense that the central bank has been very active in terms of trying to reduce the so-called aggregate demand. If you look at the interest rate policy of the central bank, it has been increasing since January. So it was around 5.5, I think, in January, and then it became 6% in February, and then it became 6.25% in March. So in fact, they were really targeting a lower inflation rate. But the negative side of all of these things, of course, is that if you decrease aggregate demand, that would mean that the economy is beginning to slow down. So in fact, it's possible that you would have a lower growth rate and also perhaps even a higher unemployment rate as the government continues to engage in this kind of strategy in terms of reducing inflation. Because if you look at the records abroad, especially in the US, the inflation risk still continues.
Yeah.
In fact, the interest rates in the US have gone up. Just about a month ago, I think there was a record high increase in interest rates from 5 to 25%. I think that was reported. I'm not sure if it's this month or last month, but there was a record high increase in interest rates in the US, and therefore you would expect that a continued pressure for the general level of prices to go up. So it's not. I mean, the central bank and the government should continue to be cautious about the inflation because it's probably going to be temporary. And the most important thing is that they need to find other ways of trying to reduce inflation, not just through so-called interest rates, because that has a negative effect on the economy in general.
You said, Prof, temporary, no, who should be cautious. But with what you're seeing right now, with all the figures, with this inflation print, does this mean, Prof, at least for the coming months, we can expect a downward trend?
I don't think so. Because of as I said, the US continues to be, the interest rates there continues to be very high, and that could cause a lot of inflationary pressures in the Philippines. Because that will cause the investments to go to the US, and therefore you would expect some kind of depreciation again in the Philippines. So there's still a lot of, a possibility that this remains temporary.
And Prof, has you think when you mentioned kanina January, February, March, but do you think inflation already peaked in January when the CPI came in at 8.7%?
It's hard to say. The main problem, I think, is the fact that the government seems to have no other inflation rate, no other inflation program, inflation plan, apart from the BSP policies. So I'm not sure. In fact, there have been reports that the output growth in agriculture had actually declined just recently, this last quarter. And so, and we have all of these, El Nino effects.
Yeah. And Prof, despite a slower headline inflation, core inflation almost remains stationary at 7.9% in
What
April.
is crucial is that we develop other kinds of strategies and other kinds of programs that will continue to address this inflation. So it's hard to say whether it has already peaked given the situation. So I would think that the decline right now is primarily due to the central bank program, which, as I said, could have negative effects, and therefore it creates a lot of complications into the system.
And why does core inflation, Prof, remain elevated?
Yeah, that's a problem. The core inflation. I mean, it has something to do mainly with the decline in the food prices. No? So the government seem to have imported a lot of these food items from abroad, and therefore causing a lower inflation rate. And as I said, manufacturing is down, agriculture is down. So there hasn't a lot of these things had to do mainly with the decline in consumption. So the in terms of the cost of production, it still remains very high, and that's why the core inflation continues to be very high.
Okay. And Prof, when do you see inflation returning to the Bangko Central's target of between 2 to 4%?
It's hard to say. I think there are also some reports in the US that there's also in a way, inflation has also been somewhat stabilized. So a lot of the things remain external. I mean, as far as inflation goes, a lot of the causes could be external. But definitely we need to come up with some domestic policy that will address this inflation problem if we want to remain within the target. Because of all of these, the fact that manufacturing and production could be affected by all of these interest rate policies. So we need to the government needs to do its job, which is to strategize. How do we further improve on our production?
That's right.
Given the situation.
You said, Prof, about domestic policies. In the meantime, while we don't have these policies that can address inflation, do you think Kadiwa stores, at least on the short term, are helpful in at least easing or bringing inflation down? How much of a relief do you think these stores bring to consumers?
Well, consumers will continue to be affected by higher prices. There's still inflation. I mean, 6.6% is still rather high. It's somewhat in the middle of the government target. So I think the government plans to pull it down to around 6%. So there's certainly a lot of things that the government still has to do. And while we're waiting for the inflation to finally fall, the consumers will be affected adversely by all of these things. They will continue to be their purchasing power will continue to fall.
Okay, and Prof, let's go to NEDA's target of at least 20 trillion pesos in investments for its public investment program from 2023 to 2028. Is that goal too ambitious or is that achievable?
It's probably achievable. Although a lot of the issues right now has to do with the fact that there's still a lot of uncertainty. So if, let's say, if it's been reported that the loans from the Philippines are quite high recently. I mean, the debt to GDP ratio seems to be rather high at this point. So it's possible that as we try to address all the other concerns, it's possible that some of the budget that should be going to infrastructure might be moved again to another concern.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stability in terms of infrastructure depends on the general conditions of the economy. So if the economy continues to have very low growth rates, then one could expect that the budget for infrastructure might be affected.
And
there's a lot of surprises that we need to
that's right,
we
Prof.
need to address, and we need to reduce as far as I'm concerned. The uncertainty needs to be limited. And that's why the government needs to establish a real plan right now, especially in inflation, especially in growth. There's a lot of international trends that may be causing a lot of problems, like the digital transformation.
Yes.
We have all of these disruptions in the global value chain, right? So the government really needs to come up with a major plan so as to address all of these issues before we could say that we have achieved a more stable economy at this time.
And thank you for joining us this morning, Prof, and your time. Ateneo Economics Professor Leonardo Lanzona Jr. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. The Philippines' banking penetration rate is among the lowest in Southeast Asia, according to McKinsey & Company. The management consulting firm said the country registered a banking penetration rate of just 56% in 2021. That's significantly lower than Thailand's 96% and Malaysia's 88%. The low banking penetration rate is attributed to financial institutions focusing heavily on commercial lending, which leaves people with little access to financial services that meet their needs. By the end of 2023, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas wants 70% of Filipino adults to have a formal financial account. The central bank also eyes to have 50% of payment transactions done online. The MVP group of companies is off to a good start in 2023, with telco giant PLDT reporting a 5% increase in core earnings. Its fintech arm Maya also reports that it is close to reaching its target number of users for its first month anniversary this month. Mobile journalist Pam Vasquez with the rest of the report.
Despite challenges during the first 3 months of 2023, telco giant PLDT posted high revenues for the first quarter of this year. Its telco core income reached 8.6 billion pesos, higher than 5% compared to last year. The company's service revenues also rose by 2% or 47.1 billion pesos, driven by their data and broadband segments.
For enterprise, pushing a lot of the digital transformation. So we want to be the trusted partner for growth for our enterprise customers and also SMEs. Really pushing digital adoption and business transformation to digital transformation.
Meanwhile, PLDT shared their learnings from the 33 billion peso capex overrun issue.
We've learned a lot from the audit and also from the Milbank report that we got a lot of programs, a lot of processes, and even systems have to be in place, and we're putting the controls as we speak. In fact, very strict procurement process now, and monitoring of the approvals that we are doing. So.
Smart, on the other hand, reports having the most number of registered SIM cards. The MVP-led company assured the public it will continue its efforts to increase the numbers amid the extended deadline for the SIM registration. This includes improving their portals, setting up more registration sites, and leveling up its ads to encourage people to register their SIMs. Also gaining momentum is their fintech arm Maya, which still is the leading digital bank in the country. Maya reported they've already reached 1.8 million bank customers, while 21 billion pesos have been deposited.
So that's a huge vote of confidence in the ease, convenience, and the fact that this is now the primary account for all their transactions. And we've seen that as customers make us their primary account, their transactions on the wallet side, for example, jumps up 2-fold, 3-folds.
As it celebrates its 1-year anniversary this month, Maya is optimistic to reach their 2 million mark in users. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News. All sides, all the time.